The man who once called himself my father handed Greg an iPhone box for his birthday, with a rock inside. "Only good boys get toys," he declared. Everyone around us laughed. But that laughter died out just 30 minutes later when I, encouraging Greg, said, "Come on, open it, buddy." Dad's voice rang out, over the top, like he was delivering the punchline of a joke as he slid the white apple box toward Greg. The entire room fell into an unnatural stillness, eyes fixed on the box as if it contained something extraordinary. Greg's face lit up, his chubby little fingers trembling as he carefully unwrapped the paper. "Is it really an iPhone?" he whispered, his voice full of wonder. "Open it and see," Dad responded, casting a smug glance at me over his coffee mug. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. Greg lifted the lid, but his smile faltered immediately. Inside the pristine white box wasn't an iPhone. It was a jagged rock. Just a rock. A filthy, useless rock that seemed like it was picked up from someone's driveway. Greg blinked in confusion. "Is this a joke?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad leaned back in his chair, laughing loudly, as if he'd just told the funniest joke ever. "Well," he said, sipping his coffee with exaggerated satisfaction, "only good boys get toys, right, Greg?" For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then the laughter erupted. My sister was cackling so hard she had to dab her eyes with a napkin. My brother-in-law snorted loudly into his drink. Even my mom couldn't help but chuckle, but Greg didn't laugh, neither did I. Greg just stared at the rock, and slowly, I saw the realization dawning on him. The flush in his cheeks, his shoulders slumping. Without a word, he pushed the box away, his lip trembling. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes spoke volumes. It was the same look I used to wear when I was his age. The same one I wore when Dad pulled this kind of stunt on me. "Oh, come on." Dad waved his hand, trying to brush it off like nothing happened. "It's just a bit of fun. Lighten up." "Yeah, lighten up," my sister added, nudging Greg's shoulder with a forced laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not like that's your real present." My jaw clenched, because I knew this was it, the big moment. There was no real present. This was the whole joke. A rock in an iPhone box and Greg is the punchline. I looked at my father and muttered under my breath, "Wow, you really outdid yourself this time." Dad just shrugged, like everything was perfectly normal. "Maybe next year he'll learn some respect. Then we'll talk about the iPhone." That was it, that moment. Something snapped in me. I glanced at Greg again, his head lowered, eyes glassy but holding back tears, and I felt a rage building in my chest. A rage that had been growing for years. Enough. I looked around the room, at my smug father, at the relatives laughing behind their wine glasses, at the people who found it funny to humiliate a child, and I felt something shift inside me. They had no idea what was coming, but they would. And 30 minutes later, their laughter was gone. I wish I could say this was a one-time thing, that my father humiliating my son was some weird anomaly, but no. This was classic Dad, same routine, different generation. Growing up, he never hit me. No, he was far too proud for that. His abuse wore a suit and tie. It came wrapped in sarcasm disguised as fatherly advice. Shame dressed up as tradition, love with a price tag. "You're not like your brother," he'd say when I brought home a B instead of an A. "He's sharp. Well, you try. That counts for something." I spent years chasing his approval. I got a scholarship, I worked 3 jobs, built a business from nothing. And still, he called me lucky, never smart, decent, never driven. Every holiday, every family gathering, he made sure to remind me that no matter what I achieved, I was still the family disappointment. And when Greg came along, I hoped it would change things, but it didn't. My dad barely acknowledged him, never remembered his birthday, never asked about his schoolwork, and when he did speak to him, it was always some backhanded criticism. "Don't you think it's time to toughen him up?" he said once when Greg cried over a scraped knee. "You coddle him too much." Coddle? I wasn't raising Greg to become him, but apparently that was a crime. So when Dad handed Greg that rock in the iPhone box and laughed at his expense, something inside me finally broke. "You know," I said, standing up slowly, "it's funny." "Funny, huh?" I continued, my voice cold. "You've spent your whole life convincing everyone that you're the strong one, the patriarch, the backbone of this family, but all you've ever been is a coward hiding behind a cardigan." The room went silent. My mom's eyes widened in shock. My sister froze, choking on her wine. Dad just leaned back, squinting at me like I was a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. "Watch your mouth." "No," I said, stepping forward, "you watch yours." You just humiliated my son in front of the whole family. And for what? A laugh? A little moment of control to feel like a man again. I was joking, for God's sake, he scoffed. No, you weren't. You were performing, like always. You do this every time. You find someone weaker, younger, someone who trusts you, and you crush them with a smile. Greg sat quietly, gripping the armrest of his chair, his small hand trembling. I looked at him, and then back at the others in the room. You all saw it, every single one of you, and you laughed. The room went completely silent. I smiled. But there was nothing kind about it. You want to know what's actually funny? I said, I brought him an iPhone, the real one. It's in the car. I wanted Dad to have his moment, so I'd waited. A wave of gasps rippled through the room. That's right. I was going to let him hand it over. I thought maybe, just maybe, he might finally act like a grandfather. I turned to my sister. But you laughed. Emily, you laughed like it was some comedy show. You. The therapist should know better. My brother-in-law shifted uncomfortably, always the neutral one, like Switzerland. But tonight, even he couldn't ignore the tension in the air. My mom tried to cut in. Can we not do this now? It's Greg's birthday. Exactly, I snapped, and you all ruined it. I walked out without even grabbing my coat, just headed straight to the car, pulled out the actual iPhone box, and went back inside. I handed it to Greg. This is for you, from me, because you're a good boy, and don't you let anyone, tell you otherwise. He blinked up at me. Thanks, Dad. His voice cracked on the last word, and it almost broke me right there. Then I turned to face the room. You had your show, now it's my turn. I pulled an envelope from my back pocket and dropped it on the table. What's this? Dad asked, eyeing it like it was a bomb. It's the updated power of attorney paperwork. You're not on it anymore. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the house you co-signed on but haven't paid a cent toward, the accounts you've been helping manage for Greg's college fund. It's all done. All of it. You can't just. I can, and I did. My sister's husband looked confused. Wait, what accounts? Her face went pale as I saw panic flicker behind her eyes. Yeah, I said. Maybe someone should have told you. Guess who's been dipping into the family trust behind your back? Be quiet, Emily hissed. No, I said, calm but deadly. You be quiet. The room was no longer laughing, and I was just getting started. Dad's hand hovered over the envelope like it might explode. His jaw clenched, but he didn't open it. Deep down, he knew. He always knew when he was caught. You're making a mistake, he said, voice tight. This isn't how families solve problems. No, I replied, voice like ice. This is how men solve problems when their family treats their child like garbage. I turned to Emily. Let's talk about that emergency withdrawal from Greg's college fund. You told the bank you had my authorization. She froze. I needed it for Ellie's therapy. No, I cut her off. You needed it for your Bali yoga retreat. You posted the whole thing on Instagram. Healing my inner child on the beach. Cute caption. Paid for with my actual child's education. Her husband shot up from the couch. Wait, you took money from Greg's account? She tried to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. $2,200 gone. You forged my signature and said it was approved. I have the bank report, I continued. The teller even remembered you saying you smiled the whole time. You're overreacting. She barked, her voice cracking. It's not like I drained it. You stole from my kid. I shot back. Don't stand there and pretend it was some misunderstanding. My mom tried to intervene, her eyes glistening with fake tears. This is getting out of hand. No, Mom, I said, my voice like steel. What's out of hand is that Dad has been using Greg's social security number to open credit lines since he was 5. The silence in the room was deafening. Even Emily sat down, no longer able to hold herself up. My mom turned to my dad. What is he talking about? I dropped a manila folder on the table, 3 credit cards, all with small limits, all maxed out, all opened in Greg's name, with his SSN and your address. Dad's face went white, his lips trembling. You can't prove that. I already did. The bank was very helpful when they realized a minor's identity was being used. You'll be getting a nice letter soon. Might want to clear your schedule. I raised you, he said, his voice low and shaky, and I trusted you. I snapped. But you used my son to protect your pathetic credit score. You played the part of grandfather of the year, while financially strangling a 9-year-old. Mom sank back into her chair, her face pale. You've gone too far. No, I said, voice like iron. You all did. Years of silent dinners where I was the punchline. Years of being told I wasn't as smart as Emily, or not as charming as Dad. Years of paying for Christmas gifts you took credit for. Covering tuition for a niece who called me boring behind my back. Paying your property taxes just so you could go on cruises. I turned to face them all, and I did it. I did everything, not because you deserved it, but because I hoped, just once, you'd see me, you'd look at Greg and think, he's better than we were. But instead, you pulled him into the same toxic spiral I grew up in. Dad finally snapped. You selfish, bitter little man. You want to destroy this family over a stupid rock in a box? I laughed. It wasn't pretty, it was feral. No, I said. I'm destroying the illusion. This family's been broken for a long time. I'm just turning the lights on. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing now? Mom asked, already panicking. Sending a copy of this folder to the attorney I hired last week, also CCing the fraud division of the bank, oh, and Child Protective Services, just in case someone needs to ask why my kid's identity was being exploited. Emily shot up again. You're insane. I looked straight at her. No, I'm just done. Greg stood next to me now, the real iPhone in his hand, still unopened. He reached up and took my hand. Can we go, Dad? God, I almost broke. His voice was so calm, so trusting, I nodded. We started walking toward the door, but then Dad's voice rang out. Desperate, if you walk out of here, don't come back. I stopped, turned around. You already made that choice, the second you laughed at my son. Then I turned to look at the others, Emily, her husband, my mother. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not your backup wallet, and I'm not your scapegoat. I'm his father, and that's the only title I care about. And with that, we left. The door slammed shut behind us with a dull thud, the silence that hung in that house, probably still echoing. But outside, in the driveway, under the cold gray sky, my son looked up at me and said something I'll never forget. I'm glad you're my dad. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. The very next morning, I got a text from my sister. You went too far. Dad's furious. Mom hasn't stopped crying. I didn't reply. By noon, my inbox pinged. It was from the fraud department. The investigation had officially been opened. By 3 p.m., I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Mr. Turner? This is Detective Amanda Ross with the Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to schedule a formal statement regarding the identity theft of your son. Boom. They thought I'd simmer down, thought I'd let it slide. But no, this time I wasn't swallowing the pain, I was turning it into ammunition. Within 48 hours, I'd filed a police report and submitted every single document. I had bank statements linked to Greg's social security number, screenshots of the forged withdrawal from his college fund, and video footage from the birthday party that showed exactly what happened when my father humiliated him. They laughed at a child, they stole from him, and now? Now we were going to court. The family's silence lasted about a week. Then Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was frantic, her words tumbling over each other as if she was trying to outrun the truth. Honey, please, let's just fix this internally. Family doesn't go to court over mistakes. Your father's not well. Emily's a mess. Just come over. Let's talk. I didn't even bother finishing the message. That Sunday, I got a formal letter from a lawyer, my father's lawyer. They were threatening to countersue for defamation of character. The audacity almost made me laugh. You can't defame someone who just handed a rock to his grandson and told him he wasn't good enough. I called my lawyer immediately. Let them try, she said. We have enough evidence to crush them in open court. Crush was an understatement. The trial was scheduled for mid-June, civil court, fraud, identity theft, misuse of a minor's information. But I wasn't just after justice. I wanted the truth on public record. The first day of court was packed. Emily looked like a ghost. Dad showed up in his best blazer, still trying to control the narrative with a forced calm. Mom wore sunglasses indoors, classic drama. Their lawyer tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding. Mr. Turner, he said with a smile, don't you think this has gone too far? I leaned forward, my voice clear, cold, and deadly. My son's name and future were used like currency by people who laughed in his face. You're right, it has gone too far. That's why I'm here. The judge nodded. Let's proceed. And we did, and it was glorious. On day 2, my lawyer presented the financial evidence. On day 3, the banker who handled the forged withdrawal testified. Day 4, surveillance footage showed Emily entering the bank, signing my name, and smiling. She tried to claim I'd given verbal permission. I had audio recordings proving otherwise. She folded on the stand, trying to cry. The judge wasn't impressed. Then came Dad's moment. Under oath, they asked him, did you open credit cards using your grandson's information? He hesitated. Then I don't recall. Wrong answer, because the bank had already confirmed that his phone number had been used during the verification calls. His signature matched his address, and then I dropped the bombshell. A recorded voicemail he left me just 3 weeks earlier. It's just some cards, for God's sake. He's a kid. He's not going to use the credit. What's the big deal? The courtroom fell silent. Even my mother looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The final ruling? Emily was ordered to repay $2,200 to Greg's college fund, plus fines. My father? He was fined and placed under investigation for elder fraud, on top of the identity theft. The judge even recommended the case be forwarded to the DA. I was awarded $25,000 in damages, but more importantly, the court sealed Greg's credit. He was safe. And in that moment, the courtroom saw exactly who my family really was. As we walked out of the courthouse, Emily chased me down the steps. "You've destroyed this family," she hissed. "Do you realize what you've done?" I turned to her, calm, still, powerful. "No," I said, "you destroyed it. I just exposed the rubble." She didn't respond, just stood there, blinking like a light about to flicker out. Greg looked up at me. "Are we done, Dad?" I smiled, almost, but just one last thing. That night, I took him to the Apple store and let him pick out his own AirPods in a case. "It's not about the stuff," he whispered as we walked out. "I know," I said, wrapping my arm around him. "It's about respect. You called me a loser," he said. "Now you call me the only one who can save you." 3 months had passed since the fallout in the courtroom. I thought things would be quiet after that, peaceful, a new beginning. I was wrong. At first, everything was calm. I focused on Greg, on building a real life. I set up a new college fund, locked it tight, took him to Aikido, started reading with him every night. He laughed more, slept better, the tension in his shoulders. The one I knew all too well from my own childhood was finally gone. But ghosts have a way of clawing their way back. The first crack came from my mother. She called at 6 a.m. I saw her name flash across my screen and immediately knew something was wrong. I picked up. "Your father. He's in the hospital," she said, her voice trembling. "Heart attack. They say he needs a procedure." We can't afford it," she added. "The court took too much. Please. He's asking for you, for Greg." I didn't answer, just let the silence hang. "He regrets it," she whispered. "Please, just come see him." I hung up, and I didn't go. A week later, I received a letter from my aunt, one of the few relatives who'd stayed out of the mess. Inside was a clipping from the local newspaper. "Longtime Councilman Richard Turner hospitalized after cardiac complications. Family now struggling financially after recent legal issues." Below, a GoFundMe link. Goal, $40,000. Raised, $3,200. Top comment. "Hope the son finds it in his heart to forgive." Donation from Emily Turner, $10. "I hope he gets a second chance," it said, "as a father, as a grandfather." Pathetic. Days later, another call, unknown number. My father. I didn't plan to answer, but curiosity, or maybe closure, made me swipe. "Hey, son." His voice was frail, broken. "I don't sleep anymore. I think about it, about what I did to Greg, the rock, the way I looked in his eyes, and I thought I was being funny. Turns out, I was being cruel, just like I've always been." Silence. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but if you ever showed up, I know it's not over, that maybe I still have a chance." I took a breath. "Greg made a custom phone case at school," I said. "It says, 'Only good boys get toys.'" "That's good," he said weakly. I asked him what it meant. He said, "It means bad grandpas don't have grandsons anymore." Click. I didn't call back. A week later, I found myself in the old neighborhood, the same strip mall where we'd once gathered for Greg's infamous birthday prank. I saw them, my family. What was left of it? Dad in a wheelchair, Mom beside him, Emily handing out flyers. "Help Richard Turner. Family matters most." I watched from across the parking lot. Emily noticed me first. Her smile flickered. She jogged toward me. "You came. I knew you weren't as cold as you pretended." I said nothing. "We were wrong, all of us, but we're still family." "No," I said. "We were a cult where love was conditional and money was currency, and now the God you worshipped, status, control, image, has failed." She blinked, stunned. "This isn't about money." "Then why does your flyer have a QR code and not an apology?" She flinched. I turned around and walked to the car. Greg was in the passenger seat, watching. When Emily caught sight of him, she raised her hand to wave. He didn't wave back, didn't even blink, just looked at her like she was another stranger in the crowd. That was the moment I realized Greg had learned faster than I ever did. We drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Dad trying to stand, his hand reaching out like he could pull me back in time, but I was already gone. That night, Greg and I sat in our tiny living room with popcorn and a movie. "Do you miss them?" I asked. He thought for a second. "I miss who they could have been," he said, "but I'm glad I've got you." I felt a lump in my throat. He rested his head on my shoulder. I put my arm around him and closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the disappointment, I wasn't the failure, I wasn't the loser. I was the dad who showed up. The one who said, "Enough." The one who finally broke the cycle. I didn't lose my family, I built a new one.